moved here from Minnesota 14 years ago. And when I think about life back in Minnesota, I picture many hours sitting at my computer writing appraisals. Now that we live here in Bellingham, I spend many hours sitting at my computer writing appraisals. But there really are some important changes. And in Minnesota, I always kind of felt like something was missing. Could have been the mountains, the ocean, but I felt a real longing to move west, kind of like that inner guidance that John Mason talks about. I felt like maybe it was kind of a destiny thing. Well, we moved to Washington, and I found life really is different here for a couple of key reasons, and I want to talk about two of those main reasons. Now, one of them is that Mary and I really get out and deeply connect with nature here. We always enjoyed nature in Minnesota, but we travel around the West to find beautiful places. We kayak. We hike up into the mountains like Patrick. And like Tana, when we get up into the mountains, we really connect with the energy of the beautiful place. And that brings me to my the second big change. In Minnesota, I wouldn't have talked about meditating or energy. What really changed for me is shortly after we moved, I ended up spending a year in a clairvoyant training program. And that was truly life-changing. I became very aware that we are in a world, a universe, that is made up of energy on different vibrational levels or different frequencies. And I realized that probably some of you haven't been through a year of clairvoyant training. I don't know. So I'll fill you in a little on what we did. We do a lot of meditating, sitting down and clearing our thoughts, working on tuning in to things like psychic information. And sometimes psychic information would be not very clear, like say if you were standing on a beach trying to talk to someone 6 feet away and the wind is blowing. Sometimes information comes through pretty clearly. An example would be, I was doing a reading for a woman and she asked me some question. I went to tune in, but immediately I could see that there was a spirit trying to get a hold of me, trying to, he wanted something. He gave me his name and said, tell her hi, tell her I'm here. Well, I gave her the name and described this being, and she said, oh, that's my neighbor from across the street. He died last year. Well, I thought, that's interesting. Another example, I saw a bunch of symbols. I didn't know what they meant. I started describing them, and the woman said, oh, I'm having a 40th birthday party for my husband, and you're describing, it sounds like the party and what I'm making for him. Well, in my work, we discovered really there are all kinds of spiritual beings out there, and some very wise and loving ones, like guardian angels, what you might call spirit guides. And I also found that it's a great source for getting answers to questions, stuff that you might not be able to find on the internet. An example of this would be, yesterday morning, I woke up from a vivid dream with a boss I had many years ago, Bob. Some of you might remember Bob from my Christmas in Jamaica with Bob speech. Well, Bob died a couple of years ago, and he showed up in my dream last night, and he had something to tell me. And there was symbolism, as there often are in dreams, and I woke up and I didn't know what he was trying to tell me or what the symbolism was. So I meditated in the afternoon, and I contacted him and I asked him. And what I got was that he had messages about compassion and being non-judgmental. I thought, well, that's really nice. And I asked him too, and he said that he liked my Christmas in Jamaica with Bob speech. Another example of getting good information. Mary and I, on Saturday, we hiked up Guimas Mountain, out on Guimas Island. We got to the top, sat down to meditate, and I'd been feeling really kind of stressed and crabby lately. And I had not known why. Just didn't know why I'd been so crabby. I sat down, meditated, and asked. And what I immediately got was that my mom is coming to visit next month. Now, she's got Parkinson's, she's got declining health, and she's getting harder and harder to deal with. And what I got in my message is that not only is this bringing up my concerns about my mom, but it's kind of triggering for me my own fears about aging, about having enough money in retirement, about declining health. And I thought, wow, that makes perfect sense. Then I asked, what can I do about this? About not being so crabby. What I got is, in the big spiritual picture, everything's going to be okay. And I need to remember to meditate. When you meditate, you really connect with that calm inner part of you. And you connect with the wise spirit world. I found that to be so helpful. Oh, and as an eternal, it reminded me that I too am an eternal spiritual being. And so I'm really not near the end, like sometimes it might seem. So in conclusion, moving to Bellingham has brought about some really big changes in my life. And I hope living in this beautiful area, you might also think about connecting with nature and realizing that there's so much more out there to connect with. Madam Toastmaster?